All right, everyone. Donald Trump is saying, no, I'm not going to cooperate with any of these House subpoenas. I'm going to stonewall every single one of them because fuck off. Basically, what's happened is that after 2 years of being jerked around by a probe that nobody even wants to talk about the sum and substance of the Mueller probe anymore because the left realizes it really, got fucked on that one. So now they've jumped immediately to Trump's financial records. And again, where there's smoke, there's fire, but there's no smoke. There has never been, much like there was never any probable cause, any reasonable probable cause, to believe that the Trump campaign was colluding with a foreign state. There was never any evidence. One dossier is not evidence. It was op research. It was mostly falsified anyway. It was used and filtered through a half a dozen fucking people before it got to a probe that spent $30 million in 2 years to catch a 10-year-old money laundering convict, which is Manafort, and that's pretty much it. Very, very expensive way to recoup. What was it? How much did they recoup? No, I bet it wasn't $30 million. I bet it wasn't even close. I bet it was less than $1 million. They managed to recoup out of that by grabbing Manafort shit. Supposedly, he lived a much less lavish life, actually, all things considered, with the exception of some of his luxuries overseas that they can't really touch. In the wake of that witch hunt failing, they defaulted to what they had been talking about before, which is we think he cheated on his taxes. We think Trump is a fraud. Which doesn't make any sense because you can physically visit his properties and see, well, yeah, okay, he obviously has a lot of assets here. There's a reason he makes $100 million a year on fucking rental fees. But there's no probable cause. No reasonable person would look at Trump's shit and say, based solely on what we know, not what we suspect, not what we have potential access to, but what we have seen already, we believe that there's some fraud going on. And by the way, why should Congress get involved? Shouldn't the IRS be handling it? Oh, that's right. They've been auditing him for years anyway, and they've never actually gotten him on anything. So the IRS, which can do pretty much whatever it wants to you, it can fuck you in the ass because it's the IRS and nobody really dares to try to muzzle them because then they get audited. The IRS has carte blanche, even more than the Mueller probe probably did, to do basically whatever they want. You're telling me that after several decades of continuous audits, they found nothing, but Schiff is going to find something? When he doesn't even have the apparent legal authority to step on the toes of the IRS to force them to give up anything anyway. What are they going to do? Are they going to drag the head of the IRS? Does Schiff really want to tangle with the IRS and drag them before Congress? So that the IRS heads and say, yeah, we're auditing him. Yeah, his lawyers probably told him not to give you shit because then we gain it. Yeah, no shit. That's the way that it works. No sane person, when under audit by the IRS, is going to start throwing their financial statements around. They're going to lawyer up, and they're going to say, if there's any significant money involved, it's not like the IRS is trying to recoup $50 from you. Yeah, we think that you did a write-off for a toaster oven that wasn't proper. We want that $50. Yeah, just fucking give them the $50. Otherwise, you're lawyering up probably, if you're smart and if you're capable of doing it. Pro bono lawyers, by the way, occasionally available. You can do that. And it's crazy talk to think that Trump wouldn't try to stop Congress from constantly egging him on. Look, he's already been investigated by Mueller and his team, by Senate Judiciary, and now by House Intel. 3 totally separate groups, and IRS audits and everything else. He's had everyone breathing down his neck for several years and nobody's found anything. At some point, they have got to let go and let the country return to normal and stop lying to the American people and obsessing over this topic. There is no probable cause. Now, yes, it is possible for the House has the authority without any probable cause to do its inquests and probes. But should they? No. Should they have the authority? Arguably, no. In some cases, yes, there should probably be more constraint on the U.S. House and its ability to drag people before it endlessly and investigate them and gain access to what would normally be privileged information protected by the Fourth Amendment. It's crazy that a group of people... The original goal, hundreds of years ago, was that the House, as the body most closely associated with the American people, representing districts, representing chunks of voters more directly than the Senate, certainly than the executive branches. One executive, there are senators, 2 per state. In most cases, therefore, the House is much more directly inclined towards representing the people directly. The idea was that this was the less formal, the more civically minded body within Congress. The Senate was more sort of austere and somber. The House was more directly towards the people. The idea was to give them the power to investigate on behalf of the people. The problem is that as partisan politics and ideological partisanship has increased, it's become nothing more than a cudgel. Whichever party runs the House happens to use it to constantly attempt to prevent the other party from doing anything. With the exception, of course, of they never stand in the way of some of the truly atrocious ideas like, hey, let's throw billions of dollars to foreign nations to bomb people while we have debt, while we're in a recession especially. Hey, let's ignore the warmongering. Just let that happen. We don't need a probe into that unless some whistleblower comes forward, the same whistleblowers we ourselves are trying to crucify on a regular basis, like Julian Assange. By the way, free Assange. Definitely keep that going. We're not going to look into government corruption if it's within our own party, because Lord knows it doesn't matter, because they're all corrupt anyway. They're all. It's very funny how somebody with a $100,000 a year salary after 2 years of work, starting from nothing, suddenly is worth $50 million. Nobody ever wants to look into that. I wonder where the money comes from. It can't all be coming from $1,000 a plate Goldman Sachs speeches. Some of it can, but yeah, that's a stretch. I don't know that they give that many speeches to Goldman Sachs. They have deep pockets now, don't they? The original idea was to have the House holding people accountable when necessary. You know, it was to be used sparingly. The power to investigate things was supposed to bring accountability. Now it's the opposite. Now it's, hey, we're just going to obstruct constantly. I'm not surprised. I don't blame Trump for standing in the way of these investigations, because they're investigating the same shit that Mueller had access to and that Senate Judiciary had access to. They both cleared him of any wrongdoing. Mueller had access to pretty much everything around Trump to the third degree. He found no evidence of collusion. He found no, at least, direct evidence of obstruction. Of course, that's up in the air because it's more of an arbitrary definition. The House would love to impeach him for it. I think that's a terrible idea. It'll backfire in the Democrats' faces. But what the fuck do I know, about politics at this point? No, they found nothing. They didn't find it. Mueller never says, yeah, well, he might have cheated on his taxes or something. We found, X, Y, and Z. Talked to this person, said, yeah, Trump's basically a fraudster and stuff. Nothing. Not one statement. Not one piece of paper. Not one line of evidence. Don't you think that that's telling that after decades of IRS audits, Senate Judiciary access, at least in a roundabout way, to everything fiscal involving the Trump organization and the Mueller probe, they didn't find anything? Don't you think that that's telling? And Schiff, what do you think he's going to find? The House Intel Committee is not going to have any much greater access than than the Senate had. Although that was, Republican-led, but they may not have dug as deeply. But who's arguing that Mueller is a Trump fan now? I've actually seen some people on the left arguing that, which is funny because they used to call him the Messiah because they thought that he would bring him down for collusion charges, which never happened because there's no collusion, which is why I told people 2 fucking years ago. A lot of these people, they're just living this weird fantasy where Trump is he's a horrible person. He's never done anything good. He's at one point, he's both a billionaire fraudster that bilked people out of all of the money that he has, and at the same time, he's a total loser that never managed a business properly. Which is it? Is he a total satanic cutthroat that just destroys everything in his path and puts little old ladies on the street? Or is he a total fucking loser and a moron who never, basically he just got money from daddy and magically it turned into billions of dollars? Which is it? I'd really like to know. I'd like Schiff to answer that question, but he and AOC and all of his ilk, they're just convinced that they can keep the shtick going forever and it's not going to backfire on them. I think he'll find differently. That's about all. Peace out.